I've been working a few days on this rod bearing and main bearing situation. Hopefully we've got some things figured out. I measured the crankshaft on this number 3 where it looks so bad here. I measured the crankshaft to see if maybe it was big, but everything was perfect on that crankshaft. It was ridiculous. I didn't measure everything yet, but I measured the number 3 and I measured a couple of the mains. Everything's dead on to a 0. I have not checked the rod yet, but this sure is funny how it sure does fit in there loose. I don't know. This main bearing is what I think you should run. Now the problem is it only had 1.5 thou clearance, which doesn't really sound that bad. That's in the recommended street Hemi range, but the race car range is 2 to 3. So I got some bearings. This is really exactly what you would want. They do have the dowel pin hole, which I don't like, but that doesn't hurt anything. So this is a 527. That means a big block Mopar. H means their high performance bearing, race bearing. X means 1 thou extra clearance, and that's what we need here. This looks to me and you like it didn't have enough clearance. And then N for narrowed. So that's good. This is as perfect as we're going to get. I had to pay through the nose to get them, whatever it was, $145 or $149 plus tax. But we've got rod bearings. I've got some main bearings. They're Speed Pros, but they're supposed to work. Joe's going to come over Monday and we're going to test fit the crank into the block, make sure that the clearance is good, and make sure that we have thrust, and then we'll have all of our bearings behind us. I need to check the rod diameter and make sure that this is the right size and everything. I expect them to be perfect, but you have to check everything, you know. There would be no reason to sonic test this block because it's not like the owner is going to go find another block if this one wasn't thick enough. But viewer Mopar Nut said he'd like to see it sonic checked, and we can do that. I won't make you sit through the whole thing, but we can at least sit through one of them probably. To calibrate the sonic tester, I cut this ear off of a 426 Hemi block over there, and then I surface ground the sides so it would be smooth. This piece is 0.4825. Sonic tester says 0.480. Well, we're 2 thou off. I might have to check that out and re-certify it. Okay, 4.825. Okay, that's better, 4.82. Or 0.482. We're within 1/2 thou. Okay, so this will be the thrust side. So this is the side you want to be thick. Wow. That's what I call thick. 384. Wow. Wonder if that's real. Wow. We'll call that 358. You know, I'm used to working on blocks that are 400 or 500 bore. And of course, they're not going to be that thick. So in the middle, we got 257. That's pretty good. And at the top we've got, usually you get about 2, and then you have to put some more gooey on it. 283. Now let's go to the front side. Of course, there's not as much activity on the front side, so it's not as important. 326. This has got to be the best part of being 425 bore. You got some really thick bores. 340. Wow, this thing's a dream. 384. 211. Well, I wonder if that's right. You've got a little indicator over here telling you if you've got a good grab or not. And that's only got 1 bar there, and that's not good enough to be accurate. So that means I probably need to come up. It's probably down there where it's solid. Yeah. So now we're getting a real number. 180. That's not much between, but remember, we're in between the cylinders here. 180. You wouldn't have to check this if it was a Siamese bore in the middle, because that's solid. 159, 160. And at the top, see the deck, I must be on the deck because it's showing real thick, so you come down a little more, because I don't think it's really that thick right there. This is a water block, so we've got water in between the cylinders. But the deck on these is 600 thick, so you have to go down a little further. Wow, I'm getting real numbers. It's so, wow. That's a little out there, but 557, what can I say? And now for the bottom. 447, 386. I don't know if I can get another one out without putting more juice on there. 417. So those are great numbers. The only one we had that was weak was right here, 158. Yep, 158. Okay, 158, right there in the middle, but that's in between the cylinders, not like the major thrust. So we're not going to cry about it. I'll go ahead and do the rest of the block, and then I'll show you the numbers. Okay, so here's our numbers, and they look real good. That's the front of the motor, and that's the major thrust side, 1 to 8. And, I mean, your major thrust here, 283, 257, 358. Now, of course, this should be good, because this is 425 bore, and they're great. They're wonderful. But you'll see a few of them, like this one, where it says 557, which is, in other words, the Siamese went down that far, because there's only 550 in between there. And that means the Siamese went down that far, and I couldn't call it the top anymore, you know. Now, the reason it says 557 is if you don't get that, it's 550 across here. So if you get it slightly skewed, then you're reading that number instead of that number. But anyway, it looks like he's got a very good block. The lowest one was probably this 147, which that's, you know, that's not thrust, you know, that's on the side. I'm not an engineer, but I don't think there's a lot happening there like there is over here. But the numbers look real good. There's a few low, but 160, 158. But still, all in all, the man's got, what, more than a quarter? There's only one below a quarter inch on this side. No. So this one is a little bit less than a quarter inch on the major thrust in the middle location. It's good. Now that we have some bearings, we can put them in the rod and check out the rod and find out what our clearance is going to be. We know the crank's dead on. But before we can check the clearance, we first have to check the size of the rod. And just like when we were doing the main caps, we have to do the same to the rods. Just a nothing file, and you're filing over the top of it, not trying to remove any metal, just feeling for any burrs. And then you come across the sides. There could be a little burr there. And everything feels good. When I checked these bearings, I liked the way they fit a lot better. Remember how that other one was loose in there and just fell out? But that one fits in there tight. Actually, just exactly like it should. And so did the other one. But I'll get all this done to the rods. Then we'll check the size of the rod. Then we'll put in the bearing. And then we will check the bearing clearance. And hopefully have very good things to say. Now I've cleaned up the rod, torqued the rod bolts down to the rod manufacturer specs. These are ARP bolts. Of course, they want ARP lube on the threads and underneath the head where it's going to be turning against the rod. The spec on this is 2.5 plus 5/10 and minus 0. I've got 0 at the top. So they are plus 2/10, and that's perfectly in spec. They only give you half a thou, but minus 0 and plus 5 is the spec. So we're all good. Now let's put a bearing in it. Let's hope we get the right bearing clearance. The bearing is in, the rod's torqued down again. I have the dial bore gauge set for the crankshaft size, so we'll be reading the clearance directly on the gauge. We have to have 2.5. You saw the problem on that other one. And these are the same bearings that are supposed to have a thou more, so we desperately need it. Two and a half or a little more? That's wonderful. 2.5. I love it. That's what we needed. There's no sense in us checking the small end of the rod right now because we don't have the pins. They're going to come with the new pistons. When they get here, we'll mic those holes and make sure that they're going to fit properly. Even though there's probably nothing wrong with this oil pump, since we're doing a rebuild, we ought to look in there and just make sure everything's clean and nice. These are pretty simple to take apart. You just have these 2 bolts holding the cover to the main body. And then we have that one big plug, which is the pressure relief valve. There's not that many pieces to take apart here. You've got the cap and the washer. You've got the pressure relief spring. This being a high volume pump, so it gets the Hemi spring, the black spring, which gives you around 75 of bypass pressure. And I've got little fingers, so usually I can just take the piston out. Everything looks good there. It slides easily. Even though you can put this back together and reuse these 2 O-rings, I'll probably just put some new ones in there because everything looks perfectly clean. You don't see any dirt anywhere, any metal, which is what I would expect. You know, I don't know which pump gets that pin and which one doesn't. I was surprised when I saw that. Now these sometimes look like they have some marks on them or something, but there's nothing wrong. I mean, that looks about as good as a used one can look, and they can have a lot of scoring and still pump perfect pressure. It's absolutely perfectly clean, and there's nothing to do here. All I'll do is put it back to clean it up, dry it off, oil it back up, put it back together.